Good morning. This is Eric Tonkery, Director of Marketing Education. It's my pleasure this morning to introduce you to Professor Kristina Durante. We're here to discuss with her her latest article in the new summer edition of the Rutgers Business School Review. It's entitled Outdated Gender Norms Continue to Haunt Women's Workplace Advancement. Good morning, Kristina.
Good morning, Eric. How are you?
Very well, very well. So let's get started talking about the article. I think a lot of fascinating stuff here. We were talking about women have experienced great success in careers more than ever before, including our first female vice president. More women are in MBA programs than ever before. Wharton now has more female MBAs than male MBAs in the upcoming fall class. Yet you state outdated gender norms are still there for women. Okay, what are the outdated gender norms? How do they come to be, and why do they still exist?
Right. So you're right. Yes, that's true. So women have made unprecedented strides in the workplace for sure. But there's still a long way to go towards equity and building opportunity for women. But like you said, women are outnumbering men now on college campuses. So it's poised to change, but we have to really be active about changing the social narrative, because those outdated norms are still around, haunting us. And the outdated norm is men are the breadwinners and women are the home tenders. So men are valued for their careers and women are more valued for their nurturing and for their caregiving at home. And it's really have been hard to eradicate these. And they seep in through, individuals and through organizations treating women in ways that are different from men, and treating men in ways that are different from women. If for example, men were spending more time at home caring for their children. So it does work both ways. So the traditional gender norms that I talk about in the article emerged across the thousands and thousands of years of human history, where a division of labor between a man and a woman actually worked well to help children survive. So women long ago, 1,000 years ago, had much less control over their fertility. So if you were a woman, for most of human existence, there was an all but certain chance that you were a mother. And the energetic demands of pregnancy and feeding babies through our bodies and caring for little helpless children required a lot of us, of women, a lot of energy. And so we needed help, we needed assistance, finding food and protection and shelter. And usually that came from a male partner, from a man. But they were not having babies, so they weren't as tethered to a home base. So they could go out and do what was left over of what needed to be done at home. And that was going out and bringing resources home. And so this division of labor worked very well for thousands and thousands of years. And it became so ingrained in our culture and in our norms because it worked so well. And now advanced to today, and women have a lot more control over our choices. There's birth control, there's advanced family planning, advanced medicine. And so we're free now, but those leftover norms that existed for thousands of years are really hard to eradicate. There simply hasn't been enough time where we've been living in our modern environment to sort of get rid of that in terms of our biases and our psychology. And we're still sort of defaulting to it in the way that we treat men and women in the workplace.
That's great. And along the lines of what you're sharing with us, sir, today, I found a study that really, kind of raised my eyebrows, stood out in the article that you referenced here. It said one study of heterosexual married couples who provide 80 to 100% of household income, only 38% of them, of the women and of the wives reported here, stated they were the prime breadwinner.
Right. Yes. So that study astounded me too. So in that study, it was Americans, men and women, couples where the woman was the primary breadwinner. So the woman was responsible for 80 to 100% of that household's income. And so it was a study of couples. And basically when they were asked who earns, who's the breadwinner, you or your partner, only 38% were saying that the woman, that the wife was the primary breadwinner of a sample of everyone who was in that situation. So we have, we have male partners and female breadwinners, and both of them are more likely to not respond. Yeah, I'm the breadwinner. So women aren't wanting to, and men aren't wanting to, admit that they're the caregiver at home. And women aren't wanting to admit that they're the breadwinner. And so what that is probably a reflection of is just not wanting to go outside of those traditional gender norms, the haunting of that. And it's coming out in surveys. And so, as an experimenter, that really caught my attention too, is we have to be really conscious of the social nature of how we're asking these questions and people wanting to respond in a socially desirable way. And unfortunately, the traditional norm is the way people feel that they're valued. And women feel they're valued for being at home, and men feel they're valued for being the breadwinner. So neither wants to admit when they're outside of that.
And I'd like to bring up a follow-up question to that. And in your article, you referenced the fact that when women are paired or working with other women, they're more inclined to mention or discuss their aspirational goals, as opposed when they're in a mixed situation where there is both men and women and career jobs or a working culture where they're, let's just say, less open about admitting what their aspirational goals are. I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, and actually I found that interesting when I was a graduate student. I had actually, what actually happened is that when I was a graduate student, I had a male colleague, come by and knock on my door of my office and say, wow, you're still here. You're just, you're always here working. And he said to me, I'll never forget it. He said, a woman working on her career is like a man working on his hair in front of the mirror for 2 hours. What's the point? And what he meant was this norm. Women aren't, if a woman becomes a CEO, this doesn't, open up a sea of men who are waiting, to become her husband and shore up, the unpaid labor at home. So women aren't valued the same way for their career as men are, just like men aren't valued the same way for their, their newest hairstyle, the way women are. But I was just so struck that he told me that I started to become interested in women's career choices. And when I looked at the data, I found that in the United States, in cities where there were few men, there were more women in the highest profile, highest paying careers. So there were more women CEOs, surgeons, lawyers, engineers, careers that we think are more male dominated. When the fewer men that there were around, the more likely women were to be in these roles. So that means that it's not a lack of interest. It's probably a lack of opportunity. So then I ran a series of experiments where I basically took men out of the picture. So we experimentally went in and led women to believe that there were very few men around. So if this was done, many of the studies were done in the university lab, so on college campuses, and we led women to believe that there were just very few men on campus. And when we did that, so we were changing the sex ratio, kind of like the real data that we saw across the US. And when we did that and we led them to believe there were few men around, women were reporting a greater ambition towards building their career. They had a greater interest in, the sort of high profile careers and working on their career. So they started to feel more ambitious and felt okay talking about that. Now, when we led them to believe there were many men around, then we saw them really scale back on that and say that they were more interested in being at home and taking care of kids. And so when we see it vacillating like that, just changing are there a lot of men in the room or not, then we know that some part of it has to do with where women see that they're extrinsically valued. So if people aren't valuing me for this, I don't feel as safe talking about it. So and other people have found similar results too, as you talked about, when women's responses are private and women know that no one else is going to see them, or they believe that no men are going to see them, then we see those sex differences in sort of desired salary. So if you ask men and women, what's your minimum required salary for this position, men are going to be a lot higher than women in their required minimum salary, which probably has a lot part to do with the fact that in 2020, women were still making 84% of what men made in the same position. And it was much less even for women of color. So women are fearing, and what's driving this is a fear of backlash. So women are fearing that they're going to be in some way punished for asking for what they feel that they deserve. But when women think that no one's going to see their answer, then those gender differences go away. So men and women are increasing the salary when they feel safer to request it.
Which kind of brings to the next question, which I think you've already answered it indirectly, is that do men desire high-powered careers more than women? The short answer is no. It seems that if they're in a setting where the culture supports and it gives them a supported system where they feel they're able to express their true desires and aspirational goals, the short answer is no. You know, that they're going to feel inclined to be their true self.
Right. So a lot of the difference between, so if you do ask men and women, you know, how, you know, here's where are you in your career right now? Where do you aspire to be? Men are always kind of higher than women. So men do desire high powered careers more than women if you ask them straight out in a survey. So many people have found that, and there likely is, you know, some difference, but once you take away the backlash fear, and women feel safer to maybe express their true preferences, then this diminishes. So yes, so there are many, many women who do desire high profile, high power careers, that, you know, just don't feel as safe talking about it, which means that they probably don't feel as safe. Many women following it. No, many more women are doing this now. And the young women, I have a lot of hope with the young women. It seems like even, you know, I'm watching my daughter, and they, you know, we are changing the social narrative, and hopefully the momentum will continue moving forward. But yes, so the idea that women are just, you know, really would rather be in the kitchen anyway is not a blanket statement we can make for all women.
Mm-hmm. Now that question apparently motivated you on some earlier research that you did. Is that right?
Yeah. So it all stems back to that conversation that I had in graduate school, because I've always been someone who, you know, I never thought about not having a career. It dawned on me. And I think it doesn't dawn on most women. I think, you know, so, you know, girls and boys are born with brains that become interested and curious and passionate about all sorts of things that exist on Earth. So, you know, my daughter and my son both have passions that they're pursuing, and I hope they continue to pursue them. So there's no gender differences in curiosity about, you know, bugs and mountains and space, you know, so they're curious. But what happens is then we, you know, young people learn like, oh, okay, we're valued for this. Women are valued for, you know, being agreeable and beautiful and nurturing, and then, you know, men are okay, you know, our boys are okay to be, you know, competitive. And so I never really lost that. I just then felt the push and the pull of, wow, how am I going to manage it now? Because I want a career too, but I also, you know, I really should have a family and be caring and be at home. And, women put a lot of demands on themselves. And so I've always been thinking about that. And then the comment from some of my male colleagues, that is what motivated some of the earlier work that I did with, manipulating the sex ratio, like I talked about before, and that I talk about in the article. And even looking at, and I think I mentioned this in the article too, looking at the matrilineal societies. There's very few of them in existence, but they're other species have, where and even humans, there are matrilineal societies, if you Google it, that exist today, much fewer than patrilineal. So matrilineal, the women are in charge. The women have the power. And in those societies, women are more competitive than men. So we all have the capacity to express these behaviors, but we really kind of tune into our environment and what's acceptable. So if our brain is wired for anything, it's wired to be sensitive to the environment and what is socially appropriate to express. We learn this very early on when we're kids. And we sort of, adhere to that pattern. But yeah, this has been a long-term interest of mine because I've also struggled with it.
And you say that these outdated gender norms still come up in ways in the way we behave in hidden ways. What would be an example of that?
Oh, okay, the hidden ways. So I think that the survey you referenced at the outset was one of them. So, with the way that women are responding in these surveys, with not wanting to admit that they're breadwinners. But one of the things we also see is that women who are the breadwinners also tend to be doing even more of the housework at home than women who are not the breadwinners. So women who earn less than their husbands are doing less housework than women who earn more than their husbands. And we can certainly talk about all of the long-term negative ramifications of that with unpaid labor disputes that might exist when we have like two high-powered dual career earners. So I could go on and on about this, but that's one way it comes out in hidden ways, is that women still feel the pressure to adhere to the caregiving and the taking care of everything at home. We still can't let go of that. So women are putting a lot of pressure on themselves. We want to succeed at our work at home. We want to make sure we're taking care of everything at home and taking care of everything at work. And that's a lot. So, yeah.
And the final question is, how can we ever change these outdated norms?
So that is the $1 million question. So, and I think, Eric, you and I have talked about this too, is that there are a lot of mismatches between what worked thousands of years ago and our modern environment. I mean, we're advancing so fast, our brains can't really keep up with it. So we're still walking around with brains that desire a lot of high fat, high sugar foods. And we find them on every corner now, but they used to not be on every corner. We used to, have to search high and low for them. And we needed the motivation, the taste, the desire to be able to get up off our, keisters and go find the food. But we don't, now we have, diabetes and high cholesterol and obesity because our predilection for these kinds of foods was very helpful for us thousands of years ago and not anymore now that we're mass producing food. So it's the same with these traditional gender norms. They served us very well when we needed a division of labor that helped households run better. Doesn't work today. And now these are basically adaptations gone awry. And so what we have to start doing is just really being more proactive about changing the social narrative and the way that we talk to our children, our boys and girls. So we kind of naturally default to talking to our girls like, oh, you're my sweet, beautiful, look how beautiful you are. You're sweet angel, to our little girls. And then the boys are just like, buck up, champ, my champ, brush it off, shake it off. You can do it, king of the world. And so we need to make sure that our kids are hearing both of those messages. So we need to make sure that our boys are hearing that they're valued for being kind and empathetic and nurturing as well as competitive, and that our girls hear the same thing. They're valued for their empathy and nurturing behaviors and also their competitive behaviors. And I can't say enough good things about having young girls in sports, and fostering that, and supporting that in them. I was never into sports. My daughter loves softball. And so, I think it really does a lot for confidence, or any, activity, if not sports, then it's ballet or the debate team or, music or whatever it is.
Sure. Well, Kristina, I'd like to thank you very much for your time. I want to encourage our viewers to read the article. Again, it's entitled Outdated Gender Norms Continue to Haunt Women's Workplace Advancement. And that's in the latest, the summer edition of the Rutgers Business School Review. Kristina, I want to thank you for your time today.
Thank you so much, Eric. Appreciate it.